"I'm sorry, sir, but perhaps you've mistaken us for a costume jewelry store?" The words sliced through the gleaming air of Manhattan's most exclusive jewelry boutique, sharp as cut diamonds. Mark clutched the wrinkled envelope containing 15 years of saved tips and overtime pay, his calloused hands steady despite the shame burning his cheeks. Around him, Cartier's crystal chandeliers sparkled off display cases worth more than his yearly salary, while well-heeled customers pretended not to notice the confrontation, some smirking behind manicured hands. The sales associate's designer suit probably cost more than Mark's entire wardrobe, his platinum watch catching the light as he gestured dismissively toward the door. Two socialites at the next counter exchanged knowing glances, their whispers carrying just far enough to sting. In the corner, a man in a black baseball cap lowered his phone, his jaw tightening as he watched the scene unfold. The security guard by the door shifted uncomfortably, his hand moving to his earpiece, as if seeking instruction on how to handle this disruption of the store's carefully curated atmosphere. "My wife of 20 years deserves the best," Mark's voice carried quiet dignity, even as another customer pulled out their phone to record what they assumed would be his humiliation. "And I've saved for 15 years to give it to her." He placed the envelope on the counter, years of dreams and sacrifice wrapped in weathered paper. The man in the baseball cap stood, removing his sunglasses, and those who recognized Ryan Reynolds' face knew the story was about to take an unexpected turn. The boutique's hushed atmosphere crackled with tension as Mark stood his ground, the envelope on the counter between him and the sneering sales associate becoming the centerpiece of an unexpected drama. Behind the pristine glass cases, generations of love stories sparkled in precisely arranged rows, engagement rings that had launched $1,000 proposals, anniversary bands that marked decades of devotion, and celebration pieces that commemorated life's grandest moments. But none of those stories had started quite like this. Sarah's face floated in Mark's mind, her patient smile when he'd worked double shifts at the construction site, her quiet understanding when he'd missed another dinner to pick up an extra job driving for Uber, her unwavering faith in him through 15 years of scrimping and saving. She still wore the simple gold band he'd managed to afford when they'd first married, the same one she'd kissed and called perfect, even though he'd seen the way her eyes lingered on magazine photos of proper diamond rings. The sales associate's manicured finger tapped impatiently on the glass, each click a deliberate reminder of Mark's perceived inadequacy in this temple of luxury. "Sir, we have clients with appointments waiting," he drawled, the word clients weighted with meaning. A young woman with a designer handbag dangling from her arm whispered something to her companion, both dissolving into poorly concealed laughter that echoed off the boutique's marble floors. The sound seemed to embolden the sales associate, whose practiced smile took on a sharper edge. He lifted the envelope between two fingers as if it might contaminate his perfectly pressed suit, making a show of examining its worn edges and coffee-stained corner. "Perhaps I can direct you to some of our more accessible pieces," he suggested, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "We do have a small selection of sterling silver items near the entrance." The security guard by the door shifted uncomfortably, his own wedding ring catching the light, a simple band that looked more like Mark's target than the glittering displays surrounding them. In the corner, Ryan Reynolds set his phone down entirely, his casual shopping posture transforming into something more alert, more focused. The star of countless romantic comedies recognized a love story when he saw one. But this wasn't playing out like a Hollywood script, not yet. Around him, more phones emerged from designer purses and tailored pockets, their owners expecting entertainment at Mark's expense. Mark's weathered hands trembled slightly as he opened the envelope, not from shame, but from the weight of 15 years condensed into this moment. Each crumpled bill and carefully saved hundred told its own story. Christmas bonuses diverted, lunch breaks spent working side jobs, countless small sacrifices made with Sarah's smile in mind. The sales associate's face twisted into an expression of open disgust as Mark began to count out the money, each bill carefully smoothed against the gleaming counter. "Sir, really, this is becoming inappropriate," the associate hissed, glancing nervously at his wealthy clientele. "We can't have you handling our display pieces with those hands." He gestured at Mark's calloused fingers, stained with the honest work of construction sites and overtime shifts. A woman in pearls audibly gasped, as if rough hands might somehow tarnish the diamonds through the protective glass. Ryan Reynolds stood now, recognition rippling through the store as he removed his cap. He'd come to browse engagement rings for a movie role, researching the perfect proposal scene. Instead, he'd found something far more compelling, a real love story being crushed under the weight of pretension and prejudice. His own hands, smooth from Hollywood manicures, curled into fists at his sides. The sales associate's sneer froze as a new voice cut through the tension-filled air of the boutique. "You know what I love about places like this?" Ryan Reynolds's distinctive tone carried the same warm humor that had charmed millions, but underneath lay something harder, sharper. He moved with casual grace between the display cases, each step deliberate, his presence commanding the room's attention more effectively than any security guard. "It's the stories," he continued, running a finger along the pristine glass. "Every ring in here is meant to be part of someone's love story, their perfect moment." His eyes met Mark's, then shifted to the envelope of carefully saved bills. 15 years of perfect moments right there on your counter. The sales associate's complexion had shifted from superior pink to uncertain pale, recognition warring with his practiced disdain. A young woman who'd been filming the confrontation dropped her phone to her designer purse, shame coloring her cheeks. The security guard by the door straightened, his own wedding ring glinting as he adjusted his stance. The boutique's atmosphere had transformed from mock-worthy entertainment into something else entirely, a moment of reckoning. "I've spent the last month researching jewelry stores for a movie scene," Ryan continued, now standing beside Mark. "A scene about the perfect proposal. But you know what?" He picked up one of the crumpled bills from Mark's envelope, smoothing it with the same care its owner had shown. "I think I just found a better story, one about real love, sacrifice, and—" His gaze locked onto the sales associate. The interesting choices some people make when faced with both. The sales associate's professional veneer cracked further as he struggled to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Reynolds, of course, we value all our potential customers," he managed, the word potential still carrying a whisper of his earlier contempt. "But we have certain standards." "Standards?" Ryan's eyebrows rose as he leaned casually against the counter, his movie star charm taking on an edge that any fan of his more dramatic roles would recognize. "Let's talk about standards. Let's talk about a man who works 60-hour weeks for 15 years, saving every extra dollar while wearing the same shoes until they wear out." He gestured to Mark's well-worn but clean work boots. "Those are standards." The boutique had fallen completely silent now, the earlier whispers and muffled laughter replaced by the heavy weight of collective shame. A woman who'd been pretending to examine tennis bracelets slowly closed the display case, her own massive engagement ring suddenly feeling less like a triumph and more like a question mark. "Tell me," Ryan continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the store, "how many people in here right now can say they've shown that kind of dedication, that kind of love?" He turned to the watching crowd, his expression inviting them to search their own hearts. "Because I've been in Hollywood for years, surrounded by million-dollar marriages that last months. But this man?" He placed a hand on Mark's shoulder. "He's got a love story worth more than every ring in this store." The sales associate's fingers drummed nervously on the counter as he watched his carefully maintained world of exclusivity crumble. Several customers had already slipped quietly toward the exit, their own expensive purchases feeling somehow tainted. But it was the phones, still recording, still streaming, that finally broke him. "Perhaps," he began, reaching for the envelope with suddenly solicitous hands, "we could start by looking at our signature collection." "No." Ryan's voice cut through the attempted recovery like a knife. "I don't think we'll do that, because I've been watching, and you know what I realized?" He turned to address the remaining audience, his actor's timing perfect. "This isn't just about one sale or one ring. This is about who we think deserves love, real love, the kind that makes you save for 15 years just to see someone smile." Mark stood straighter now, his dignity returning as the tide of the room turned. The envelope of savings remained untouched on the counter between them. 15 years of sacrifice, now transformed into something more powerful than mere money. Through the boutique's windows, a small crowd had begun to gather, drawn by social media alerts about Ryan Reynolds' presence, but staying for the unfolding drama. "So here's what's going to happen," Ryan continued, his casual tone belied by the steel underneath. "We're going to look at every ring in this store, every single one, and we're going to treat this man with the respect his dedication deserves. Because right now," he smiled, but it wasn't his usual comedic grin, "he's the only person in here who's proved he truly understands what these rings are supposed to represent." What happened next would be viewed millions of times across social media, but no viral video could quite capture the electric tension in the boutique as Ryan Reynolds reached into his jacket pocket. "You know, the movie scene I was researching?" He pulled out a small, worn photograph, creased and softened at the edges. It was about a man who spent years saving up for the perfect ring. We wanted to make it feel authentic, realistic. He placed the photo carefully on the counter beside Mark's envelope. The image showed a young couple on their wedding day, the bride wearing a simple dress and a radiant smile, the groom in a rented tux, both of them glowing with the kind of happiness money couldn't buy. The date stamp in the corner read 1988. "That's my parents," Ryan said softly. "Dad worked construction, too. Saved for 3 years to buy Mom's ring. Nothing fancy. Probably wouldn't have been good enough for this store." His voice carried a weight that no script could have provided. The sales associate stared at the photograph, his carefully constructed world of status and exclusivity crumbling further. Behind him, a middle-aged woman in expensive jewelry had pressed her hand to her mouth, tears threatening to ruin her perfect makeup. The security guard by the door was no longer even pretending to maintain his professional distance, openly watching the scene unfold with undisguised emotion. "When I told Mom I was researching this role," Ryan continued, his eyes meeting Mark's, "she told me something I'll never forget. She said, 'The value of a ring isn't in the diamond. It's in the hours someone worked to give it to you.'" The sales associate's hands trembled as he reached for a set of keys, unlocking the premium display case with none of his earlier condescension. From outside, the gathering crowd pressed against the boutique's windows, phones raised as the story spread across social platforms in real time. But inside, something more profound than viral fame was unfolding. 15 years, Ryan mused, his voice carrying the same warmth that had delivered countless romantic movie monologues, but now filled with genuine emotion. That's not just saving money. That's saving moments, memories, dreams. He turned to the watching crowd. "How many date nights did you skip?" he asked Mark. "How many extra shifts did you work? How many times did your wife tell you the old ring was just fine while you were quietly saving for her dream?" Mark's voice, when he finally spoke, carried the quiet strength of a man who had never needed an audience to validate his love. "Sarah never complained, not once. Even when I missed our anniversary dinner last year for an emergency construction job, He smoothed another worn bill from his envelope. She just wrapped up my plate and said every hour I worked was another hour she felt loved. The woman in pearls who had gasped earlier was openly crying now, her expensive mascara leaving trails down her cheeks. Her hands moved unconsciously to her own massive diamond ring, twisting it as she watched Mark count out his years of dedication, dollar by careful dollar. The sales associate, his transformation complete, began bringing out their finest pieces, handling Mark's saved bills with the reverence they had always deserved. In the end, it wasn't just about the ring anymore. The boutique had become a stage for something larger, something that touched everyone watching. As Mark finally selected a beautiful solitaire, elegant, timeless, and worth every hour of overtime, Ryan stepped forward again, his voice soft but carrying to every corner of the now hushed store. "You know what makes a diamond precious?" He picked up one of the display rings, letting it catch the light. "It's not just the cut or the clarity, it's the time, years of pressure, heat, and patience, creating something beautiful." He set the ring down next to Mark's envelope of saved bills. "Kind of like love, real love, the kind that takes years to build, that handles pressure without breaking, that comes out stronger and more beautiful for all the waiting." The sales associate, who had started this story as an antagonist, now carefully wrapped the chosen ring in the boutique's signature blue box, his movements reverent. But instead of the usual tissue paper, he began laying Mark's worn bills in the box alongside it, each one a testament to the true cost of love. "Every great diamond has a story," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "but I don't think we've ever had one quite like this." Outside, the crowd had grown larger, their phones capturing what would soon become a viral moment of transformation. But inside, in that quiet space between spectacle and sincerity, Mark stood holding the ring that represented not just 15 years of savings, but a love story worthy of Hollywood, one that Ryan Reynolds himself would later call the most real thing I've ever had the honor to witness. The video of Mark's story exploded across social media before he'd even left the boutique. Your real love story and our Ryan Reynolds hero were trending within hours. But inside the store, a more intimate transformation was taking place. The sales associate, his earlier contempt replaced by genuine humility, insisted on personally calling the store's master jeweler to resize the ring immediately, at no extra charge. "Your wife," he said softly to Mark, handling the worn bills with new respect as he processed the payment. "She must be extraordinary." His eyes flickered to his own reflection in the store's mirrors, seeing himself perhaps for the first time as others had seen him. Behind him, other customers had begun sharing their own stories, of first rings, of hardworking parents, of love that valued sacrifice over carrots. Ryan stayed through it all, his celebrity presence now secondary to his role as witness to something authentic. He helped Mark choose a special message to be engraved inside the band, his famous wit giving way to genuine emotion when Mark decided on a simple, "Worth every moment, love, M." The story's impact rippled outward in unexpected ways. The boutique's corporate office, responding to the viral moment, announced a new Love Over Luxury program, dedicating special services to customers with similar long-term savings stories. The sales associate, his own transformation complete, became its first ambassador, sharing his changed perspective on morning talk shows. Ryan Reynolds, true to his reputation for turning authentic moments into meaningful action, worked with his production company to reshape the movie scene he'd been researching. Instead of a fictional proposal, they began developing a documentary about real couples and their ring stories, with Mark and Sarah's 15-year journey as its centerpiece. But perhaps the most profound change happened in the boutique itself. The display case where Mark had finally found his perfect ring now featured a small plaque. "Every ring tells a story. Some take 15 years to tell. Beside it, a framed collection of worn bills served as a reminder that love's true value couldn't be measured in carats alone. 1 month later, Sarah's reaction to both the ring and the viral story became its own moment of internet gold. But it wasn't her tears of joy that captured hearts, or even her amazement at the celebrity involvement in her love story. It was her quiet revelation that she'd known all along about the extra jobs, the saved bills, the 15 years of dedication. "I saw him putting money aside every week," she shared in Ryan's documentary, her new ring catching the light as she held Mark's hand. But the real gift wasn't what he was saving. It was that every dollar meant another moment he was thinking of me. She smiled at her husband of 20 years, the kind of smile that made viewers understand exactly why he'd worked so hard for so long. The original video has been viewed millions of times, spawning countless discussions about love, worth, and what makes a moment truly precious. But in the end, it wasn't the viral fame or the celebrity endorsement that mattered most. It was the simple truth that Mark had known all along. Real love isn't measured in carats or dollars, but in moments of dedication, in years of patience, in the quiet certainty that some things are worth waiting for.